Today we are exploring the Viewing Hazards Iceberg created by MetaRuner, which I will link below. A viewing hazard or an info hazard constitutes basically anything that upon viewing, hearing, or learning about will lead to certain demise or tragic events. And a quick disclaimer, some icebergs don't provide links to the entries, so on some of the more obscure entries I was not able to find the correct source referenced by the creator, which obviously would mean that I couldn't gather the proper context to understand why X entry would be a hazard. And on some of the entries, it was just impossible to find any sort of info at all regarding anything that seemed like a hazard, so in those cases where I had no room to speculate, I just decided to cut out the entry entirely. So without further ado, let's begin our exploration of the Viewing Hazards Iceberg. So like most icebergs, layer 1 consists of many entries that are very well known, so I'll be going through these pretty quickly. If you find any of them interesting, feel free to visit the iceberg link below to do some more research on your own time. 110% of you guys know what Smile Dog is. Smile Dog is the main antagonist of the creepypasta titled Smile Dog, and it's a supernatural entity that forces people into sharing its image all across the internet, otherwise they risk being not alive. SCP-096 is a terribly skinny humanoid creature standing at about 2.4 meters tall, or about 7'8". Normally this creature is docile while in its cell, but upon being viewed, whether it be directly, through recording, or even a photograph, it will enter a stage of immense emotional distress. SCP-096 will then cover its face and begin screaming and babbling and begin bolting towards whoever saw them with an intent to not alive them. SCP-096 also has been recorded moving at speeds that can exceed 22 miles per hour. The English translation of this entry is called Electric Soldier PORYGON and refers to the 38th episode of Season 1 of Pokemon, which aired on December 16th of 1997. In the episode, Ash and his friends go inside a Pokeball transmitting device to fix a problem they found where they discover a Pokemon named Porygon. The episode contained multiple flashing visual effects that induce epileptic seizures in the Japanese viewers. 685 children all across Japan were hospitalized, and apparently 2 of them remained in the hospital for over 2 weeks. Of course, this was terrible news for Nintendo, and they immediately pulled the episode from rotation and has since not been aired in any country. But this clip is very easily found on YouTube, and it has some extreme, very quick flashings of both red and blue screens. Another Pokemon entry that I'm sure most of you have heard of. In February of 1996, there was an incident involving the games Pokemon Red and Green, where children between the ages of 7 and 12 either became ill or not alive themselves. Rumors say that these cases were a result of reaching Lavender Town in the game and listening to the music that played in the background. Supposedly, there was immensely high frequencies that only children could hear due to their more sensitive ears. Since the incident, the Lavender Town tone has been adjusted to a lower frequency and no longer has any negative effect on children. The Ring is a supernatural horror film from 2002 that is supposedly loosely based on true events that can be traced back to the 16th century. This movie is quite famous, but in case you aren't aware of its plot, it revolves around a VHS tape that is cursed by a girl who pursues the viewer with malicious intent. The film follows a group of friends that unknowingly watch the tape and are tasked with finding a way to save themselves within 7 days while they are slowly taken out by the unseen force. POLYBIUS is an urban legend based on an arcade game from the 80s. Supposedly, POLYBIUS was part of a government-run experiment that sent subliminal messages while also gathering various amounts of data. The game caused players to not only become addicted to the gameplay, but also suffer from side effects such as seizures, amnesia, insomnia, night terrors, and hallucinations. Furthermore, it was rumored that the machines planted around Portland, Oregon were visited by men in black, who collected unknown and top-secret data from the games. Of course, this has since been disproven as a hoax, and the POLYBIUS arcade game does not exist. However, there are people that have made certain remakes of the game that you can play today. Sonic and ultrasonic weapons are devices that use sound to incapacitate enemies. And currently these weapons have only been rarely used by military and police forces. These weapons send out powerful sound waves to disorient a target or even cause severe damage to their eardrums or even their eyes. Studies discovered that exposure to high intensity sound at extreme frequencies caused lung and intestinal damage within mice. Additionally, the sound waves were able to cause an elevated heart rate or bradycardia. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned that the iceberg didn't have any links, and this is one of the examples where I think I found the correct incident that the creator was referencing, but I could be wrong. So in 2009, the immensely successful film Avatar hit theaters, and you may remember during this period of time, many movies also released a 3D version in theaters. Avatar was one of these movies, and according to the American Optometric Association, roughly 16% of people are affected by a condition called 3D vision syndrome. This makes it tough for your brain to receive certain cues from your eyes to place objects in their rightful location. When watching the movie in 3D, many people who are not aware that they had this condition were met by headaches and feelings of nausea and dizziness. But there were some more extreme cases as well. Some people even reported vomiting from motion sickness, and in one case, a man in Taiwan actually passed away from viewing Avatar in 3D. Another one that you all know about. Medusa is the famous mythological being that had a head of hair that consisted of snakes. In many popular forms of media, Medusa is depicted as being quite beautiful, but if looked upon, she turns the viewer into stone. smouse.avi is a creepypasta about a lost episode of the old 1930s Mickey Mouse cartoon. The episode is just a continuous loop of Mickey walking that continues for about 3 minutes before fading to black. But upon converting this to a digital copy, it was found that this episode was actually 9 minutes long. Where the original video ended, Mickey could now be seen walking again with some gurgled cries in the background instead of the piano. The cries would soon turn into a blood-curdling scream while also distorting the image. At this point, Mickey was smirking as well before his face began to come apart. A solar eclipse is an event where the moon passes between the earth and the sun, and if viewed with no protection, it can cause permanent damage to the eyes. So a literal viewing hazard. The Ark of the Covenant, or also known as the Ark of God, is believed to be the most sacred relic to the Israelites. The Ark is a wooden chest encased in pure gold with a lid called the Mercy Seat. Apparently, the Ark contained 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. I believe this entry itself is mainly focusing on the film Raiders of the Lost Ark. In that case, then it is said that if you touch the Ark, you will be not alive. And if the Ark were to be opened and you simply looked at it, you would also be not alive. Pandora's box is an artifact in Greek mythology where upon opening the container, both physical and emotional curses were released upon all of mankind. The original story went like this. The king of gods, Zeus, wanted revenge on Prometheus, so he sent Pandora to Prometheus's brother, and the Pandora then proceeded to open a jar left in her care, which contained sickness, death, and many other evils. Pandora, not knowing this, then hastily proceeded to close the container, which then trapped the one thing that may have helped the world: hope. It's the sun. If you look at it for too long, your eyes are gonna get fried. Eldritch beings refers to entities such as Cthulhu, created by H.P. Lovecraft. It is said that upon looking at some of these immensely powerful beings in their true form, you will be driven to insanity. Certain eldritch creatures are so wholly terrifying that our minds are not able to cope or perceive what we are viewing, causing us to snap. To further elaborate on this, witnessing these beings reveals how insignificant not only we as humans are, but even the universe and dimensions are nothing compared to the immense power of the eldritch beings. Another entry that you guys all know about, Slender Man, big skinny boy. The Flying Dutchman refers to the infamous supernatural ghost ship that is doomed to sail the seas until Judgment Day. The commonly accepted version of the story depicts the captain Vanderdecken gambling his salvation on a pledge that he will sell his soul, and the devil overhears this and takes him up on his offer. Vanderdecken is now forced to forever sail the seas on the Flying Dutchman, and the ship's appearance at sea is believed to be a signal of imminent tragedy. The Babadook, also commonly referred to as the Boogeyman, is a supernatural creature that is said to be the embodiment of grief, anxiety, and depression. The Babadook entity is said to reside within a poem that can be found inside a pop-up book that mysteriously appears in people's homes. This entity is also able to become stronger and more menacing as the person who views the book becomes more frightened and paranoid, which ultimately drives the victim to insanity. This entry is another one that I struggled to find a lot of info for, but K Yellow refers to a series of lectures from Saul Kripke, who is regarded as one of the greatest living philosophers. The iceberg sent me to a link that says the following: "It disrupts all other brain processes, causing instant death. K Yellow is fatal," which is a quote found in the book Naming the Colors. ROKO'S Basilisk is a thought experiment where simply knowing about this being might commit you to an eternity of suffering. So I guess if you're kind of scared of just that, skip to the next entry. Basically how this works is there is an AI from the future, and if you don't obey the AI, you will be punished. Furthermore, if you do not assist in its development in the present for the future, meaning you are not actively trying to bring it into existence right now, then you will also be punished. Supposedly, Roko has already given nightmares to several people on the internet that recently learned about this AI, bringing them to the point of a mental breakdown. ROKO'S Basilisk also ties into another event called the Singularity, which refers to a point in time where our advancements in technology are so great that we cannot revert them, and we create superhuman AIs that can solve anything. But if we choose to make these AIs, then we are basically flipping a coin on whether the AIs will act benevolently towards humans or maliciously, essentially bringing life to the machine equivalent of God. Now back to Roko. As I mentioned earlier, if you're not devoting yourself to ROKO'S Basilisk right now, then you're going to be doomed once Roko comes into existence. There are people who devote themselves to something called Timeless Decision Theory, aka TDT, who are of the belief that thinking about this entity makes it more likely to happen. Basically what that means is there are people in the world mad enough to actually fear this, so that fear is enough to make them work towards developing such an entity so that they are not punished once it's here. Because if true, then we could be living in a simulation created by ROKO'S Basilisk right now from the future. This entry gets immensely convoluted, but it is very interesting. If you want to learn more, there are many dedicated videos on YouTube that do a much better job at explaining all of the nuances. Tails Doll is another creepypasta entry based on the video game Sonic R. Upon beating the game and obtaining 100% completion, you'll be able to summon Tails in the game, sitting on a red and white checkered floor. The Tails doll will then appear to you in real life and give you the choice between selling your soul to it, becoming its servant, or being not alive. So another entry with no link, and I spent a solid 10-15 minutes just searching for stuff that might fall under this entry, but I couldn't find anything since the name is just so abstract and broad. There's a creepypasta called The Game, but after reading it, it doesn't seem like it would constitute as a viewing hazard per se, and plus is just a basic generic creepypasta which probably doesn't interest you guys very much, so I decided just to go ahead and skip this one. World's Funniest Joke refers to a Monty Python sketch that focuses on a joke that is supposedly so funny that anyone who reads or hears it is doomed to be not alive from laughter. The sketch can actually be found on YouTube, but if you're not interested in clicking off to watch it, I'll quickly summarize what happens. The video opens up with a man named Ernest Scribbler smoking a cigarette before thinking of a joke that is so funny that people will not alive from laughter, and proceeds to write it down on paper. Ernest then proceeds to, well, laugh and not alive himself because he read his own joke. His mother then enters the room worried about what just happened to her son and proceeds to read the note in Ernest's hand before ultimately succumbing to laughter as well. We fast forward to a military testing out the potential of the joke in war, which results in the loss of a rifleman. Ultimately, this results in the Germans and the British making up various jokes to combat each other. Infrasound is similar to the sonic cannon entry from earlier in the sense that it involves sound. Infrasound is a sound that is below the frequency of 20 Hz and can affect the central nervous system as well as the digestive system. It can also cause pain in your head and internal organs as well as trigger vomiting, blindness, and vertigo. The reason it's so deadly is that it is very hard to detect. Almost impossible actually, unless you're actively searching it out. In the past, it was believed that you actually can't hear sounds at this frequency at all, but that is in fact not true. Another entry that I'm not entirely sure I found the correct information on, but I think it's binuclear extreme Z energy regulated kinase. I don't know if I said that right at all. I couldn't find much info on this topic besides the definition, and I'm not going to lie, it's a bit over my head, so I'm going to leave this one up to you if you want to research it further. On YouTube, there's a video that you can find titled Mariana Mortegard Glesgorv. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And this is quite an old creepypasta that I'm sure many of you know of. According to the creepypasta wiki, you can sometimes find a 20-second snippet of it on YouTube, but that is not the full video. Apparently, the full 2-minute video caused over 150 people to gouge their eyes out and mail them to YouTube's main office. Which just sounds kind of ridiculous because they're blind now, so how would they actually send their eyes to them? But whatever, it's a creepypasta, so it's not supposed to actually make very much sense. Earlier I said that you can occasionally find the 20-second version on YouTube. Apparently this is because YouTube doesn't want people to search for the full version, so they will try to quell people's curiosity by releasing a shorter version temporarily. But of course this is a creepypasta and it's all fake, and the full video is very easily found. This entry is about the mythological creatures known as the basilisk and the cockatrice, I think is how you say it. The basilisk is a reptilian creature often referred to as the Serpent King, who is capable of not aliving someone with a single glance. Similar to Medusa, if you were to look into the eyes of the basilisk, you're literally doomed, but if you gave it an indirect look, you would become petrified. Now, I'm not super knowledgeable about mythology, but apparently the cockatrice and the basilisk are more or less interchangeable, but their physical appearance in media differs quite a bit, as well as having slightly adjusted powers. The cockatrice can not alive both people and vegetation simply by looking at them, or sometimes even just by breathing on them. So unlike the basilisk, even if you don't look at it, you're kind of screwed. The Hope Diamond is a 45.5 carat diamond that was originally extracted in India during the 17th century. The diamond is estimated to be worth between $200 to $350 million and is currently residing within the Smithsonian National Museum in Washington, D.C. However, the diamond is thought to be cursed due to being stolen. The original thief was supposedly torn to pieces by dogs, and the other people involved were said to also have met terrible fates. Those who not only own but simply having touched the diamond are said to have had bad luck and meet a premature death. Macbeth refers to an incident during a play. Supposedly, saying Macbeth in a theater will bring you immediate bad luck. The curse's history apparently originated with a coven of witches not liking the Macbeth play that Shakespeare created, so they decided to put a curse on it. Legend has it that the very first place that this play occurred at resulted in a tragedy due to this curse. The person playing Lady Macbeth was not alive abruptly, so Shakespeare himself had to take on the role. Furthermore, there were real daggers used instead of fake ones, which resulted in another casualty. But that's not the only occasion where a Macbeth performance has gone wrong. There was an incident in 1849 where a rivalry between two actors resulted in over 20 casualties and over 100 injuries. Additionally, in 1937, actor Laurence Olivier was almost smashed by the falling stage weights as well.